Okay, waiting for Superman has nothing at all to do with what Lois Lane does when she's not being a reporter. This actually has to do with the American public school system. Done by the same guy who did An Inconvenient Truth, but ironically he doesn't go off onto like a pseudo-preaching tangent. A lot of this is just from the No Child Left Behind, moving forward, and how if you actually apply some basic statistics, you find out that lots of schools are entirely failing. And if you've been around the United States, you can pretty easily tell that schools have been failing for quite some time. And the No Child Left Behind Act was actually done by Bush, as well as Teddy Kennedy. And those two actually tried to come together and tried to bridge both sides of the aisle to actually make education important. Ironically, when the guys about some of the numbers, I always have to say in these movies, just if you assume that the numbers are accurate, give or take a little bit, it paints an undeniably depressing picture of the American public school system, as well as taking a couple of families, predominantly they're broken families, minorities, and as they struggle to take their children from essentially failing schools where roughly 50% of the students are going to fail and probably not even get out of middle school, to get them into better schools that are smaller schools where the children actually have the opportunity, the advantage of being able to make it to college and to go from not having a job and having a career. And that's the part that really kind of stuck with me. Not currently a parent, hope to be one in the near future, but you gotta sit back and think when you hit that point. It's like, okay, my kids have to go to school, period. Most schools in this area aren't that bad, but then again, we don't know. We don't know specifically, how test scores look, if these kids are going on to college, if these kids are all basically proficient in any sort of the very bare basics of what you go to school to learn. And that's the real bizarre, traumatizing section, because I've noticed this when people discuss, when we have our current financial problem. Well, if we had education, our obesity problem, people don't understand nutrition, if they had basic education, or education is failing, if only they had better basic education. And it's weird because he does show that we do currently spend twice as much on our students, but we've flatlined on all test scores. And in most cases it's gone down. And that's actually really bizarre. And they do have the guy who, his name currently escapes me, who did lots of phenomenal work in Harlem. And has this, this methodology works. No one else wants to use it. Because politics has gotten involved and there's, bureaucracy in all these different little locations, and it's impossible to change anything. Or next to impossible. And you gotta get the people with the will and the ability to actually go in and make these changes stick, make them last, to make any sort of lasting impact in the educational system. And I'll be honest, it's probably one of the best documentaries I've seen in quite some time. I watched part of a half an hour that I'm like, me and my wife need to watch this together. And it's done very well. It doesn't really get too preachy in one direction or the other. There are a decent amount against kind of, you can see the anti-teachers union side of things. But I have friends who are teachers, and they can flat out tell you do see teachers who entirely suck at their jobs, who can't be fired. I bet if you're a bad doctor, you can lose your license. If you're a bad lawyer, you can become disbarred. If you're a bad teacher, that's it. You can become a teacher for as long as you want to be. It's really tough to fire a poor performing teacher. They talked about how some areas do the dance of the lemons, where they take their bad teachers and shuffle them to another school, and help in that shuffling process, they get a teacher better than their lowest performing teacher. That's really sad, because we talk about how important education is. And there's always people there always seems to be more spots for teachers in some areas than there are in other areas. And occasionally you just get really poor performing teachers who will never leave. So someone who could be a really good teacher is sent on the sidelines because they're not actually going to get that opportunity. So it's a really kind of sad and depressing picture of the way things are in the American public school system. But then again, when you go out and you see teenagers, pre-teenagers, even post-teenagers, tweenagers, whatever the current terminology is, you really don't see a lot of these great bright moments. And that's the sad thing. You know, I've seen kids and I walk around like the mall and I go, I don't picture any of you becoming doctors. When I go to see a movie in a movie theater, I look around and kind of go, most of these young kids? No. They're updating Facebook watching a movie. You paid money to go sit someplace to update your Facebook status. Why even go to the movie? You're not actually paying attention to it. You're not actually getting anything from it. You're just glued to whatever sort of eye device you have in front of you. And it's really sad when you see it from almost like grade school on up. And some of the kids they have actually, you know, there's one little girl who's like, I want to become either a veterinarian or a nurse, and she has this huge long list of things she wants to do for a living because she wants to help people. Where's that from? I read in a book. And I was like, you know, that if she's driven to do it and she actually can, that's a huge success story. But where she's currently at, 3% of all the kids in her current grade average will have enough classes to qualify to go to a school, to go to a college in California. Knowing that about 50% of the people in her class currently are not going to get out of middle school. Even if those numbers are off a little bit, we'll say that who's off by 5%. Okay, that means 8 kids from her class will have the classes to go to college. 8 out of 100. Okay, we'll say it's a shade below 50% are going to drop out. If you go, we'll say he's off by 10%. 13 students out of 100, 13%, or about 40% are going to drop out. Those are ridiculously huge numbers. So, getting off on lots of tangents, but Waiting for Superman. Actually, I thought it was a really well done documentary about the public school system and things we probably could do to fix it. Beyond waiting for another president to say, I'm the education president. Which went all the way back from LBJ to Barry.